Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Tougies Take podcast, post-NHL Trade Deadline edition. For that matter, we are here today, of course, alongside Mr. Endo Mills. Endo, how you feeling?
I'm feeling better. Oh, was that
Good.
me or him? Yeah. I'm feeling better. I'm tired. I'm tired, but just finished working a Zoom call work session, so I'm all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Endo had a very interesting weekend that we don't have to get into the details of,
Yeah.
but you did put it out on Twitter, so I'm like, well.
Yeah, I had my own fucking trade deadline kind of situation. What is it? I busted up my knee. Got a contact tracing for COVID, and hopefully I didn't trade it for future considerations because, yeah, it's been an interesting weekend for me. I'm fine. I'm all right. Yeah, don't worry about me.
And today, of course, every Tuesday, we're pretty much in the mindset here for the short term, maybe the long term even, with Sin's availability. Every Tuesday, we kind of line up somebody here with us. We have seen the likes of Crash Andrews and Davos, good friends of the channel. Today, good friends of the show for that matter. And today, it's been a long time coming on this one. Current writer for the Las Vegas Sun, covering the Vegas Golden Knights, a longtime viewer and supporter of mine. I need to find out how that happened. Mr. Danny Webster joins the show. And Danny, what a 24 hours it's been for you covering the Vegas Golden Knights. Anything interesting happen?
You know what? It was good until about 11:05, and then shit started hitting the fan. Other than that, it was fine. It was fine.
Yeah, nothing. Just a nice, calm day of looking at trades and not wondering if they're actually going to go through or not.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it was funny because at around 9 o'clock, I asked around. I was like, "Is anything happening today?" And someone got back to me, and they said in the words, and I quote, "Not a clue." Not a clue was literally the only thing I got coming back to me, and I was like, "This is going to be a very long day." And it turned out that by the time we got to 11:05 or somewhere around there, picked up a little bit, just a little bit.
It was the longest day.
Oh, good Lord have mercy! It was crazy.
God. So on today's show, we are going to go ahead and talk about everything that happened surrounding the NHL Trade Deadline. So a busy podcast here that we'll pretty much get right into. Although first and foremost, again, a friendly reminder, this show brought to you by our friends at Manscaped. You can use code Tougie at checkout for 20% off your order and free worldwide shipping when you use the code Tougie at Manscaped to get the best tools for the job. Take care of yourself. Treat yourself right. And I don't know about you, but I got a little bit of a gift in the mail over the weekend from our lovely friends at Manscaped. It's a good time. They got their new body spray, the Hydrating body spray. Take care of your skin. Smell good. Smell great. It's what you want to do. The shampoo and the conditioner, which is amazing. Remember, rinse, lather, repeat. It's important. They say that for a reason, and don't be a smartass and say how many times. Just rinse, lather, and repeat. And, Endo, the piece de resistance of the new products here, their new deodorant. It's circular.
So
circular
good.
Deodorant. We are in the future, everybody. The future is now. Code Tougie at manscaped.com. 20% off your order. Free worldwide shipping. Thank you to Manscaped. We love you.
I feel so left out now. I have to get my own now.
Use promo code Tougie. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. I have extras I can send you as a thank you for being on the show.
Hey-o. I'll take it.
There you go. They've sent me some stuff along the course of their partnership with this show. So, Danny, like I said, before we get into kind of talking about the trades from around the league, first and foremost, a writer for the Vegas Sun, covering an NHL team. How did that happen for you? I'm intrigued to know the story. I've never gotten to hear it.
Yeah. So pretty much I wanted to do sports journalism for a very long time, and it dawned upon me that when I knew I wasn't going to be athletic under any circumstances whatsoever, I was like, you know what, I'll do the next best thing. And I initially wanted to do broadcast and things like that. And when you graduate and you're born and raised in Las Vegas, there's literally nothing here. And I spent most of my life wondering, am I going to see any professional sports in my lifetime in this city? And as it turns out, when I was working for the Review Journal, there was this whole situation of this hockey team coming to Las Vegas. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take a chance and see how I can get involved in covering this team. And the first thing that popped up was an opening for the SB Nation site for the soon-to-be named Vegas Golden Knights website. And I applied to that, and I got the job. And the people at the Review Journal, the newspaper here, was like, well, you can't really do that and do this at the same time, so you kind of have to leave. I was like, okay, I will leave. And that turned into about 4 months later, I got hired by NHL.com to do their correspondence work in Las Vegas for the next 4.5 years. And then back in February, the job opened up to cover the team that I have been fortunate enough to cover for the last 4 years in a full-time role, because I was doing freelance for the first 4 years, and here we are.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you also get a decent amount of travel time covering the team?
This was actually the last East Coast road trip was my first time traveling to cover the team. The only other times I went were DC for games 3 and 4 of the final, which I paid on my own dime, and San Jose games 1 and 2 before the debacle that was either a major or not a major in game 7.
God, why couldn't Sin be here?
Now, I mean, I don't have any rooting interest in this team, but I will tell you that working freelance for 4 years, the only reason why you cheer for the team you cover is because you get more work later on. And that was the only reason why I was so pissed that everything transpired in Game 7. That was the only reason why. But yeah, I was in Buffalo for Jack Eichel's return. That was fun. And I was in Philadelphia for whatever reason. Probably the last time I'll ever go to Philadelphia.
That's what I was hoping for. There we go. Good shots fired. Good shots.
You know, it has nothing to do with the city of Philadelphia. It's just the airport and the situation. I mentioned it on your stream that night. It was just
You were stuck in the airport, if I'm not mistaken.
I was stuck in the airport. The fuel latch was busted, and did not get out until 8:55 Eastern time the next morning. So it was an experience I do not want to revisit for sure.
Now, in terms of, again, like, it's one of those things where I look at some of the, like, as a streamer, as a YouTuber, I look at one of the things and it's like, oh, hey, like, this person does this, and I'm like, why are they watching me? I'd rather hear from them in terms of how they do what they do. So what is it about someone who rants and raves about player overalls in NHL that makes you go, that's a guy I'm going to watch while I'm also writing for NHL.com?
So I was hoping you would actually bring this up because it's a funny story. So back in year 1, on top of what I was doing with NHL.com, I was working for a social media tech startup as an overnight job. And that was my job, to where I can work 40 hours a week and get benefits and all of that stuff. And that's how, I was able to maintain a steady income in the event that, the season would end, this, that, and the other thing. And one night in September, right before I went to work, the Golden Knights made a decent little trade for Max Pacioretty. And the funny thing is that the trade was made after the Golden Knights rookie tournament, so I wasn't even there that night because I had to get up and go to work that night. And I was just scouring the internet one night, and I was trying to see, like, if there was any reaction to the Pacioretty trade, just so I can kind of gauge what that happened. And I was on YouTube, and I typed in Pacioretty Golden Knights, and the first thing that showed up was your Golden Knights franchise on NHL 19. And it was around the time where it was like, I think it was you wanted to go for Pacioretty to kind of make it a little bit more realistic or whatnot. And I was like, not only was your content entertaining, it was about an hour long, so I would watch videos and it would get me through my night shift. So it was just that kind of situation where it was like killing time, entertaining, and informative. And I've always been interested in the franchise style of gaming because you always see it for NBA and Madden and things like that. I rarely saw NHL. So when yours popped up, I was like, this is entertaining. I'm going to watch it. And that's how it happened.
I have never felt more confident about, one, my search engine optimization, and two, suck at everybody who says to cut out stuff out of the videos. No, there's a purpose.
There is a purpose.
I always knew I was justified in just being like, hey, here's everything. Skip through what you want to skip through. But for those who want to see the process of how annoying it could be to trade with the AI, here's me banging my head against the wall for 20 minutes. Have fun.
And it was just fun, and just watching you go for the Clausen trade and all of that stuff. I was like, shit, it's fun. Like, it seems annoying, but it looks fun as hell. And I was like, sold.
So there you go. For anybody getting into the content creation side of things, you never know who's watching. I think that's the best way to put it. So maybe don't swear like I do on stream. That might cost you some opportunities. But
I think do swear like you do on stream. Look where you are now. You're pretty successful.
That's fair. We have gotten this far.
I feel like we're just stroking your ego at this point, like entirely, like 100%. Like, yeah,
hey,
you're the guy.
You're
the namesake of this podcast. Like, fucking just keep going, huh? Yeah.
I need a bit of a pick-me-up. Yesterday was a rough day for this Bruins fan, as we will definitely get into. But Danny, I could sit here and ask you questions all day long because I think it's incredibly interesting what you do, and it's kind of honestly like a career path I looked at and I'm like, I don't know if that's necessarily for me. So I always find it interesting to talk to people who did go that direction. But as mentioned, we have a lot to talk about from the deadline, and I was tempted to go in alphabetical order, but again, you cover the Vegas Golden Knights, and the biggest story in hockey right now has to be surrounding the Golden Knights and what they've done around the deadline. So, pushing to the side the signing of Isaiah Saville, the only real move that they did.
No disrespect to the mayor of Sayville. That's what they call him in Omaha. That was good.
Oh, that's beautiful. I didn't know that, actually. That's fantastic. Whether or not Evgeny Dadonov or Dadonov, call him what you will, it depends on whether or not you grew up watching 2BC Productions on YouTube. Whether or not he's actually been traded to the Anaheim Ducks is the biggest question, and we're kind of hoping, we talked about this before we started recording, to bring this up now, and hopefully by the end of the show, we finally get the official word. On deadline day, the Golden Knights attempted to trade Evgeny Dadonov and his $5 million cap hit to the Anaheim Ducks alongside a 2024 conditional second rounder in exchange for Ryan Kessler's LTIR hit and John Moore, who has bounced around a little bit in the last couple of days. And this trade looked like it was ready to go. No problem. It goes through. And then the news breaks a few hours later. He might have had a no-trade clause. He did have a no-trade clause. Anaheim was on that no-trade clause. Did Vegas know? Did Ottawa let them know? Please explain to me how this story went from your perspective, because you have to write about this, whereas I'm just like, well, do I move him to Anaheim in NHL 22 or not? That's how I'm affected. How are you affected by this trade that may or may not be?
Yeah, so I'll kind of give you a timeline of, from my perspective, what happened. And it started at around about 9 o'clock Pacific time. I was poking around and I was talking to a source, and I asked him, because I think the overall consensus of what the Golden Knights were expected to do was shed salary, try and recoup some assets if they could. It was just a matter of who they were going to do it. Was it going to be Evgeny Dadonov or really Riley Smith, one of the two? So I asked the source, I asked him, is there anything going on? Is there anything like earth-shattering? Not earth-shattering, but anything close that would be like, oh, this would be important. The 3 words that I got, and I quote, not a clue. And I felt like that set the tone for the rest of the day. because I have no idea what in the world transpired between 9 a.m. of when I got that text to 11:05 when I got another confirmation that the Golden Knights were looking to move Evgeny Dadonov before the deadline. There was a period of time leading up to about 11:35, 11:40 that there might be a situation where the Golden Knights could move Dadonov to the Ducks for Rickard Rakell. Now, obviously, that would have required much more for Vegas to give up in terms of maybe another prospect, a pick, whatever. But then there was starting to be the rumblings after Pittsburgh got him that Anaheim would just say, hey, we'll take him off. You just have to take such and such. And it probably wouldn't have been much of a deal. Then Pittsburgh makes the trade. And then at around 12:05, I'm like, is it happening? What's going on? What are we doing? I'm trying to talk to as many people as I can. I got nothing. Crickets for hours on end, nothing. And then Jarmo Kekalainen was quoted as saying there were 33 trades in the queue at Central Registry at around 12:45. And I'm like, well, we're going to be here for quite a while. We might as well go get lunch or something. We got some time to kill. And then Kelly McCrimmon was supposed to talk at the practice facility at 2:30. So I was able to, do what I had to do. I drove to the practice facility, and there's still no official word on the trade. And me and my colleagues are looking around like, what in the world is going on? And then one of the Golden Knights PR representatives come down and is like, hey, Kelly's going to be delayed a little bit. You guys are welcome to go out. We'll let you know. If not, you want to hang tight. We should be here shortly. Well, that turned from 2:30 to 3:15, 3:15 to about 3:45. About 3:55, I want to make sure I credit the person who had it first. I believe it was David Pagnotta, who said that, who started the rumblings that there was a possibility that Anaheim was on Dadonov's no trade list, and that is where the holdup is. And the first thing that comes to my mind, because of course we don't know all the answers, is like, how did this happen? And how did we get to this point where we are 3.5 hours past this deadline? The Golden Knights are about to take warm-ups in about 45 minutes in Minnesota. And we don't even know if Evgeny Dadonov is going to play. We don't know if he's going to be in Anaheim. We don't know if he's stuck at the hotel. We have absolutely no idea. And then finally, at around 4:15, the trade is made official. The Ducks put it out first. They put the release out. So we go in, talk to Kelly McCrimmon. And then they go on, play the game as is, and Vegas obviously loses to Minnesota. After the second period, the Golden Knights put out a tweet saying that we understand that there is some complications involving the trade. We are in coordination with the league office. We will provide an update when available. To which at that point I said I needed a drink, because there was absolutely no way this could possibly happen. And then we start to see more information lead in. And of course, Elliot Friedman tweeted out yesterday that it is now in dispute with the NHL and the NHLPA. And as of this moment, I don't know if Evgeny Dadonov is still in Minnesota. I don't know if he's in Anaheim. I don't even know if he's back in Vegas. We don't know where he is. The Golden Knights are, at the time we're talking, are about to play another game in about 3.5 hours in Winnipeg. I highly doubt he is with them there. And as of now, we still have no idea. And that's where we are.
Hey, Touglas, if you're speaking, you're muted.
I think you're muted.
Well, cool. That's great. There we go. That's what happened. That's the first time I've forgotten to unmute my mic in a long time. For you guys, at least. It would pop up on my audio.
Yeah.
See, that's the key. See, Endo, here's the thing. You sit there and hype me up, and then I make a mistake like that. You put the pressure on. I got to pass the buck here. You put the pressure on me. Talk me up too high. Make a simple mistake. I think in regards to this whole situation, the shocking thing, right, is that you have, in this day and age, a miscommunication over a no-trade clause, which to most people will not make sense, given that for over a decade now, we have lived in the era of Cap Geek, General Manager, and Cap Friendly, where aside from knowing who is on these no-trade clauses, the players list, we know everything else. So I think that's what a lot of people are, myself included, are having trouble wrapping our heads around. How does an oversight like this happen? And I think any sympathy in regards to it is out the window, because it's Ottawa's front office who have taken their fair share of criticism over the past decade, and it's Vegas who certainly have had a history of, in public opinion, not doing themselves any favors when it comes to how they handle players, and it's a mess.
It is a mess. And I think that's where the whole thing lies now, because based on what Elliot Friedman reported today, it looks like that Dadonov sent his no-trade list to Ottawa on June 30th, in which the deadline, I believe, is July 1st. And I spent a lot of time yesterday reading into the transition rules from the NHLPA, trying to figure out, was there a deadline, or was it amended to the first day of the league year, which was last year, July 28th? And I think I probably read too much into that. So who knows if there was actually a deadline. I looked on this year's rules, and you can see that it needs to be submitted by July 1st. And the other ones didn't say that. So maybe I was reading too much into it.
Could it be, and sorry to interrupt, but could it be an issue with just this happened because of the attempt to get the league schedule back on track after it was so heavily disrupted by the past season and a half due to COVID?
I read into it as that, and there was probably maybe there was a lot of miscommunication, but if he did send it off by June 30th, so that's well before the submission date, he gets traded in the first day of the league year on July 28th. We're talking about a month of which, how did this get lost in the shuffle? And that, to this point, unless the league comes out and has this full-on investigation and they, say, who messed up where and how did this happen, that really is the biggest question right now, because now the only person that really deserves any sympathy at this point is Evgeny Dadonov, because he's like, I don't know where I'm going now, and I don't know exactly how I'm supposed to feel that a team just tried to trade me to a place that I supposedly do not want to go to now. And it's creating this whole dynamic that has so many layers that once this comes out, who knows what's going to happen.
To wrap up with Vegas, and I think as we'll kind of do with every team, we look at the Golden Knights right now. They're in the second wildcard spot in the Western Conference. They didn't necessarily have the maneuverability to do maybe as much as they'd like to do. How do you feel about this roster? Because I think from my perspective, I view their deadline day move as getting Jack Eichel 2 months ago. Like that was the big move rather than waiting it out, because like I said, you look at their cap structure after that deal, and would they have been cap compliant if Mark Stone did not go on LTIR? I mean, that was the big joke when Eichel was acquired, is how exactly can they afford this? So I didn't really expect them to do anything except for maybe a move like the Evgeny Dadonov move. Looking at this roster, how do you feel about the Golden Knights after deadline day, I guess with or without Evgeny Dadonov departuring?
Yeah, that's really the biggest question right now. And, you mentioned John Moore and the busy weekend he had for the Lindholm trade. That was, when I looked at what Vegas was going to do, the only thing that I knew for sure was that they were going to move somebody out, whether it had been, Riley Smith being an impending UFA, but apparently there are rumblings that he will sign an extension at some point. I don't know if that's going to be something that they want to address before July 1st, however that's going to go. Right now, as it stands, the Golden Knights, if this trade does go through, because of John Moore's contract, they're only freeing up $3.375 million, which is not a lot. Because depending on how the roster looks, because right now, Robin Lehner's on IR. Max Pacioretty was just placed on IR on Sunday. Riley Smith is on IR. I'm losing count at this point. Who else is? Brady McNabb is on IR. Alec Martinez and Mark Stone. I don't know.
You got everyone but Jake Bischoff.
Jake Bischoff, God bless him. I don't even know if he's still in Henderson at this point. So you got all those guys on IR. Kelly McCrimmon says yesterday that there is a possibility more will go on LTIR. I don't know if that sounds like Robin Lehner, because based on what Pete DeBoer and what Kelly McCrimmon have said in recent days, without the testament of one Dr. Frank Saravalli, as it's like to be called in these parts, they expect Robin Lehner to be back soon. And I don't know how that's going to actually pertain to the goalie situation, knowing how well Logan Thompson's played and how bad Laurent Brossoit has played in the last few starts. So there's that. If Max Pacioretty goes on LTIR again, that's obviously a problem. And we still don't know what Mark Stone's availability looks like. Alec Martinez is the weirdest situation I've ever seen, because we all thought it was just a cut to the face with the skate blade. And then as it progressed, it turned into he got hit in the head with a boot to the head. So now we're thinking, okay, concussion, equilibrium, all of this stuff. And he's somewhat taken steps to get back on the ice. But he's not in full contact. He's been skating with the scratches. We have no idea if he's even going to play again. So all that being said, when you have $1 billion left in LTIR, you now have to make the decision, if Mark Stone is ready to go, who goes on LTIR in place of him? And same with Alec Martinez, and same with all of these guys. And Brady McNabb is probably going on LTIR at some point. I would like to think that this roster might be enough, now that you've added Jack Eichel and he looks more comfortable as the games go on, that they could make a playoff push. Can they get there, though? Currently constructed, I don't know. And that's what a lot of people are nervous about in these parts right now. And it is a very interesting spot for Pete DeBoer to be in. And I know a lot of people have been calling for his head. There was even a petition that somehow went up here in the city that was like, we need to get him out of here. This is a hard hand for him to be dealt. And the fact that they are 18 games left in the season, and points percentage, they're out of the playoffs, but in points, they are still ahead of Dallas barely with a few games in hand. The fact that we're still talking about this team in a playoff spot is remarkable, and a lot of people need to realize that.
Currently 1 point ahead of Dallas. The Stars have 4 games at hand for that last wild card spot. And then obviously from there you get the likes of Winnipeg, who sold a bit at the deadline. Vancouver's a little bit further back, and those are, it really does seem like it's, can Vegas hold on against this push from the Dallas Stars?
Yeah, and Winnipeg, who just mollywopped them the other day 7-3, who they play again tonight in Winnipeg. So Laurent Brossoit is probably going to be in net again after giving up 4 goals and 13 shots the other night in Winnipeg. He needs to play better, and the team in front of him needs to play better if they do not want Winnipeg on their tail.
Very intriguing, obviously, the Western Conference. The Eastern Conference has kind of been set up in terms of the playoff structure for the past 2 months, if not more. I'm intrigued because there is going to be, we kind of knew heading into the season, like there were going to be teams that, okay, yeah, these good teams, not everybody can make it. Obviously, you know, you look in the Eastern Conference, it's a team like the Islanders or the Flyers where you're like, how are you as bad as you are? But aside from that, every year, you know someone's not going to make it. Obviously, we talked about Anaheim quite a bit, so I kind of want to switch over to them because they were the, I do believe, technically the busiest team at the deadline. They kicked things off, of course, by sending Josh Manson to the Colorado Avalanche. They picked up Drew Hellison in a second in that regard, which I think is a pretty damn good trade for them. It gives them another defender where who knows, and as I'm going to talk about, a lot of draft picks. Speaking of Minnesota, they acquired a 3rd-round pick next year for Nick Delorier. Still don't know how they did that. Hampus Lindholm got traded to the Boston Bruins. alongside Cody Curran for John Moore, Vegas Golden Knight legend John Moore, Urho Vakanainen, a first and 2 seconds. We'll talk about this, don't worry. They sent Rickard Rakell to the Pittsburgh... God, I just got reminded of this one. Oh, they sent Rickard Rakell to the Penguins for Dominic Simone, Zach Aston Reese, Callie Klang, a goaltending prospect, and a second-round pick this year. And then if the Dadonov trade goes through, it is a conditional second-round pick. It's a second-round pick no matter what. So,
which, by the way, the conditions on that... Sorry to cut you off. The conditions are based on the conditions of the Jack Eichel trade.
Yes.
So...
So, the Ducks were in a position where, okay, good team in the Pacific, kind of fell off, regressed, I think, to what they really were, a team that's still a few steps away. But they now have 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks this year. And then in both 2023 and 2024, they currently have 3 second-round picks for each of those classes. Pat Verbeek recently took over as the GM of the Ducks, and for his first deadline, I think he passed with flying colors.
I would absolutely agree. I was kind of on the fence of... I didn't really want the Ducks to completely sell because I thought they weren't that far off, and then I looked at the standings, and I'm like, well, they got a bit of an uphill climb to get back to a wild card spot or even get to third in the Pacific. So I think good on Pat Verbeek to understand this group is not going to win this year. And if you get to the playoffs, if you get a wild card spot, if you get third in the Pacific, you're probably going to get run out of the building in 4 or 5 games. Or as Daryl Sutter would say, it's probably going to be a waste of 8 days. So
I love that quote.
That was amazing. So I think in that sense, you like what they did, and I like the assets that they got in return. And I think this sets up the Ducks with a brighter future than I think we already expected them to have.
Endo, any thoughts on the Anaheim Ducks aside from players that they got rid of that both of us kind of wish ended up on our favorite teams?
There's a lot to process. I've been very quiet, just trying to soak this all in. Because unfortunately, I did miss a lot of the trades yesterday because I was at work. But I'm just kind of catching up on it now. And teams are getting a lot better. I'm just still more upset that teams that should have made bigger pushes did absolutely nothing. And we'll get to that later. But so far, it looked like there was a lot of good moves, especially from Anaheim, getting rid of some players and getting some stuff back. Yeah, that's what I have to say so far on everything. I promise you, I will chime in more, but I'm still like currently trying to catch up and make sure I'm up to date with everything going on. So my silence is not just out of pure boredom. It's out of just trying to research as much as I can in the moment.
Get me on the podcast once, and all of a sudden it just goes downhill. That's
and it's like, oh, get me out of here. Screw it. I guess we'll just go alphabetically through these teams then. Why not? But for Anaheim, 2 thumbs up. Honestly, for the Arizona Coyotes, I kind of feel the same way. They made sure to re-sign, some solid members of the team. Travis Boyd, I think, has finally found a good home. Leafs legend Travis Boyd. Karl Vejmelka as well, after the season that he's had, they ended up re-signing him. And of course, Jack McBain, who they acquired from the Wild in exchange for a second-round pick, which, it's funny because you look, why not? And I'll talk about that with their draft pick situation. Why not? He wasn't going to sign in Minnesota, so you could say it's a bit much, but why not? Based off of just the pure amount of draft picks that they have, they acquired a conditional 4th that could be a 3rd if the Stars get into the playoffs, so relevant for Vegas, in exchange for Scott Wedgwood. They took on Brian Little's LTIR salary and acquired prospect Nathan Smith in exchange for a 4th. Every time I see this trade, it brings back the rage. Washington acquired Johan Larsson for just a 3rd-round pick. Arizona also retained half, so Johan Larsson's making $700K. God, I hate this. And they sent Riley Nash back to the Tampa Bay Lightning for future considerations. So we talked about the Coyotes using that second for Jack McBain. They still have 4 second-round picks this year and potentially 3 firsts. Obviously, right now there's the conditional pick that involved Montreal and Carolina for the Christian Dvorak acquisition and the first-round pick as well for Darcy Kemper. So you're talking about 7 picks in the first 2 rounds this year. In a sense, why not give up a second to get Jack McBain? Why not?
Yeah, I mean, as my dog just decides to bark at the door. Apparently, my dog doesn't like what Arizona did. But no, there's a lot to like about Arizona right now, right? They go on this run where they start winning some games. They start getting the fans a little bit excited before they downgrade into a 5,000 seat arena, and they're getting the excitement level up, right? And they just keep adding draft picks. I mean, they just signed Bismelka to a 3-year extension, very friendly deal, I think. And I'd be remiss if I said I didn't really care much about the Coyotes, but it always seems like they're very proactive in getting those assets this year. And the Larson trade just threw me. Like, how in the world did he only go for a third? Like, I could not believe that was the only, and they retained half. Like, what is going on? Like,
as I had it explained, he's coming off of an injury. That hasn't stopped teams before.
Right.
Especially, too, when the market was as crazy as it was throughout the weekend in terms of what certain players were going for. So, very, very surprising. Endo, at the very least, thumbs up, thumbs down for the Coyotes.
They took our goalie.
Yeah, I guess I did forget that.
They took Sateri. It was a Harry Sateri. Recent gold medal goaltender for Finland, I believe. Played amazing during that stretch. A lot of people were talking about how this was going to be a season to prove, especially with guys who aren't in the NHL being over there for the Olympics. And big proof over there. Congrats to him. I said this. It was because when we grabbed Carter Hutton from them, it was for future considerations. And part of me was joking that, like, mate, maybe this was the future consideration that they considered. And to me, that's the way I added up, even though it's just them just yeeting our goalie from us, and now we're kind of stuck. But we'll get to that later. But I think good moves. I think they could have gotten a little bit more for that for Larson. But so far, it's all right. I mean, we already said they're going to go downgrade to like a smaller arena, and they are in the middle of like a big rebuild. So, yeah.
The Boston Bruins.
Here we go. Start the timer.
Tempted.
I gotta pour one out real quick. Hang on.
Yep.
I was tempted to save this for last because this might very well be the main event of the show. In terms of the Bruins' moves around the deadline, they, of course, acquired Hampus Lindholm, as we already mentioned, and their lone move on deadline day, because it's tough to make trades, don't you know? So you gotta, you can't go too tough on the GM. It's tough out there. It's tough. They acquired who I'm gonna fairly label depth defenseman Josh Brown, and a conditional 7th that the Bruins get if Senyshyn plays 5 games before the end of the season. It turns into a 6th, actually. So there you go. It might be a 6th. Zach Senyshyn and a 5th-round pick go to Ottawa. Their lone move of the day was to move on from 1/3 of that first-round class of 2015. Of course, Zaboral is still with the team, currently injured. I believe it was an ACL tear. And Jake DeBrusk, who they re-signed for 2 years at a $4 million cap hit. They also re-signed Hampus Lindholm for 8 years. 8 years. So, quickly, for Jake DeBrusk, the reason why I think a lot of people are like, wow, they re-signed him, they didn't trade him. He's a pending RFA. And let me know if I'm wrong here, boys. This is how I read into it. Him being signed makes him a lot more desirable to certain teams. I think we've seen the hesitancy from teams before in acquiring an RFA because you lose a lot of your negotiating leverage to be able to say, I mean, the player agent could just go, well, you wanted us. We're not under contract. That price is going up a little bit. This makes it much easier. Like, I cannot imagine that Jake DeBrusk is still a Boston Bruin by the beginning of next season.
Oh, I agree. I think that just re-signing him, I initially thought, and I had no insight on this, I thought toward the end they were just going to do like some sort of chaos trade involving Dadonov, Raquel, and DeBrusk, like toward the end. I thought that would have been something that they might have explored. Clearly that wasn't the case, but I agree in the sense that you sign him to this extension, they finish out, so what, he would have 2 years following this year, so at least it's a little bit more desirable to trade on that cap hit going into the summer. And if the Bruins somehow turn this into a deep run, at least they'll have Jake DeBrusk available to get to that deep run. So I agree. That was a very interesting move. I didn't expect that to be their only move of the deadline, and I know how angry you are about that, but oh man, I don't know.
This particular re-signing is smart, though. It was less than what his qualifying offer was for. This was a good move, and as much as, yes, we're going to get into it, I was kind of on the Fire Sweeney campaign on Twitter in the aftermath of yesterday. I'm not saying that every move Don Sweeney has ever made has been bad. He's actually made some very good moves. In theory, I don't think the Hampus Lindholm deal and re-signing is necessarily bad. I don't think Hampus Lindholm's a bad player. Matter of fact, I think, right now I think his ceiling is a little bit unknown. Once upon a time, my co-host on this show labeled something as the Great Fog of Buffalo. And I think that can be a general sense in a more broader term. What are you going to get from a player who is coming over from what is viewed as a bad team? How are they going to do on a good team? And you never really know. So I don't think Hampus Lindholm is bad. If he can play to his highest ability, and especially if he's playing next to Charlie McAvoy, he should be able to. I don't think this is necessarily a bad deal. I am wary about giving non-franchise level players 8-year deals. Yeah, personally, that scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I would.
The elephant in the. Go ahead. Actually,
I was going to say I know you mentioned that the other day about giving him 8 years and changing scenery. I would say the best recent example of that is Alec Martinez. Because when the Golden Knights sent out, I think 2 second rounders to get a guy who was very much a shell of himself by the time that they acquired him, he comes in and he's one of Vegas's top defensemen. So there are those instances where things can change, and especially you put him, like you said, with Charlie McAvoy, that should help a lot. Yeah. As long as it translates right away. Like I think they're hoping that it just translates well enough to where they get into the playoffs and that pair is just shutting down every top line that they face.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like you look at certain defensemen that have been required recently. Like, I think Seth Jones has played a better game since going to Chicago. I think Canucks fans are more happy with an Oliver Ekman-Larsson than I think they would have thought. So my issue isn't Hampus Lindholm, although I have been quoted in saying if the Bruins have a parade this summer, I will be there in a Hampus Lindholm jersey with a sign around my neck that said I was wrong. My biggest issue is this forward group. And this is my frustration. Now, right now, the top line is Marchand, Bergeron, and DeBrusk. Obviously, DeBrusk's not a natural right winger. He had that really nice hot streak and now has gone, I believe, 6 games without a goal. It's concerning. The second line, Hall and Pasternak on the wings. Beautiful. Eric Hall is the center.
Golden Knights legend Eric Hall.
And thank you for mentioning the Golden Knights, because the Golden Knights, if the Bruins had Golden Knights era Eric Halla, I have no concerns, because he had, in that first year in Vegas, a 55-point season with 29 goals in 76 games. There was obviously something just magical about that team where so many guys had career years. He wasn't that bad the next year either, but he only played 15 games.
Because he got hurt in Toronto because of that knee injury.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Endo.
Sorry. I was gonna say that inaugural Vegas team was basically the fuck around and find out team. It was the Island of Misfit Toys is what I want to call it originally, where it was like everyone who just kind of was like let go, kind of went, all right, cool. We're gonna be basically sent to a new land and discover who we are. All right, we're gonna quickly just make the Stanley Cup final and set a record for the best inaugural season ever of an NHL franchise team. Just not a big deal. We could have totally won that final anyway,
Yeah. Holla ends up spending time in Carolina, a little bit of time in Florida, some time in Nashville, and isn't that bad. And even this season, 27 points in 60 games. He hasn't been on that second line all season long. He has spent time on the third line, but the Bruins seemingly have found a little bit of magic on their third line with Trent Frederick, Charlie Coyle, and Craig Smith. Despite the fact that the Bruins won in Montreal last night off an amazing Brad Marchand move, and Eric Holla does this Irish jig while walking over to Brad Marchand, it was one of the funniest things I've seen this season. It's just that I think Hampus Lindholm should have been, and if we can pull this off, good. But that's 1B. Our 1A move is to get another forward. Mm-hmm. And they didn't do it. And I'm sorry, but I look at the fourth line of $3.8 million worth of Nick Foligno. And Nick Foligno at this point is your defensive, physical leadership guy. Tomáš Nosek, another Vegas legend, and Curtis Lazar. I'm still a little bit concerned about the offensive firepower. I am. And I think that's a fair complaint because I mentioned this on stream, and obviously my anger has subsided from yesterday's live stream during the deadline. The Bruins are, I believe they were 17th or 18th on deadline day in terms of total goals for, 6th in terms of fewest goals allowed. Now, those are very basic numbers and pretty straightforward, but even boiled down to its basic elements, you can't necessarily look at the defense or goaltending, in my opinion, and say that was the biggest issue. I can't necessarily give the Bruins a passing grade for this deadline. I can't. I fully admit that, hey, yeah, this could work out. Who knows? How often is it that the Stanley Cup favorite ends up winning?
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're Tampa the past 2 years, I guess. How often is it, though, that ends up working out? I mean, everyone's like, oh, Colorado or Vegas slam dunk for the Stanley Cup final last year. Sorry, Danny. And sorry for the lack of extra games there, thanks to Montreal of all teams. That's the point, right? Yeah. You never know what it's going to be. So they could go on a deep run, but I wasn't exactly instilled with that extra bit of confidence that I would have, even if it was someone who might be viewed as a more defensive forward, like an Andrew Kopp, or someone like a Ricardo Keller, even a Max Domi. I'm not sitting here saying Max Domi would have solved all the issues in the world, but you look at certain numbers and it's okay, he does still seemingly have that playmaking ability. I just can only imagine Max Domi passing pucks to Taylor Hall and David Pastrnak, what might happen for that second line. And we're not going to see it. And we're not going to see David Krejci back. He's done. He's happy staying over, in Czechia, and I'm happy for him. I am. He doesn't owe this fan base anything. But I'm worried because if you talk about the Bruins, if the playoff situation stays the same, and look, right now, they are even in points with Toronto, which is insanity. The Leafs do have a game at hand. They're 1 point behind the Lightning, who have 2 games at hand. So who the hell knows what's going to happen in this Atlantic Division. But Boston against Carolina, I'm not overly enthusiastic about that matchup because Carolina has, I think, a 7-3, maybe it was 7-1, and a 6-0 victory over the Bruins in 2022 so far. I'm not overly enthusiastic about a potential matchup with the Rangers, as unlikely as it is, because the Rangers got better, the Penguins got better, the Panthers and Lightning got better, and the Leafs at the very least made a deal too that I do think makes them better. I could rant about this all day, and I won't, because obviously we have some other teams we want to talk about, and granted, there are some teams where it's they didn't do anything, moving on. But I don't know. Like I the best way I can sum it up is I feel like I've had glasses on that or that some people have glasses on that extend about 5 feet in front of their face. So you can't really see anything to the left or right of you. But they do see Hampus Lindholm and they're like, yes, this is good. Meanwhile, I'm like, okay, I see Hampus Lindholm, but I also see problems to my left and right that other people don't seem to be seeing. Am I taking crazy pills here, or am I accurate with my concerns?
So I want to jump in and say you can't discredit the Boston Bruins for that game against Carolina because it was with Tuukka Rask. And it was with him letting in 5 goals with a .583 save percentage. So that first game, yeah, totally. Like Tuukka wasn't ready at all. Then he retired like a week later. The second game, yeah, I see what you mean. I think, but I do.
Second game
see,
was worse than the Tuukka game,
right? Yeah, like I do see your concern. I do think that there is still tons of time in the regular season for them to figure this out because they're in for the playoffs 100%. And if the dude plays Carolina, I think they're going to put in the second year and put up a fight. I think it's going to be a struggle for them to get out of the first round. But then again, when was the last time a Leaf fan said that it's going to be a struggle to get out of the first round? So
that's the last time they didn't say it, right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Now you know how I feel. Welcome to the club, buddy.
Jesus.
Let's cope together when we're both out of the first round. I'll go over the main. I'll make sure to get my passport.
I can see it now. June 21st, Coping and Seething with Tougie and Endo, the podcast.
Live episode of Tougie Take Podcast.
Ooh, live.
I'll just be drinking the whole entire time. You'll just have like a can of like bubbly soda or whatever.
Can you put on a 45-minute Hell in a Cell match on WWE 2K22 while this is going on?
Yeah.
What will last longer, my rant about being upset or this match?
Yes.
15 cage climbs the entire fucking time. And then shots investigating about if the cage broke in the top or not. If it didn't render through. God, it was...
That other night was just... I was dying laughing. Just... I can't remember who the hell was fighting, but it was hilarious. But Boston, though, correct me if I'm wrong, Tougie, this is probably the same issue they had in the playoffs last year, right? Is the inability to score when they needed to and scoring timely goals. And I mean, I know the Islanders are at that Islanders team is, Barry Trotz is pack it in, rely on the goalie, this, that, and the other thing. But Taylor Hall obviously was a good addition for that. I felt like they could have probably gotten someone else that would have helped. And like you said, Max Domi would not have hurt that situation. If you got him with Pasternak and Hall, that would have worked out great. And Eric Halla is just someone who I think is still just trying to work his way back from that injury, and he just never has gotten to that point. And that's why it was so easy for Vegas to move on from him that following year. It was just he was almost ready to play for the playoffs in 2019 had things go on schedule, but it's just he has not been the same player since that year one. And it's not just his production. That knee injury definitely took a lot out of him.
So we could talk about the Bruins all day long. I will spare you guys. I think that was kind of my best way to take all of my thoughts and emotions and frustrations over the past few days and just kind of meld it all together into as concise of a point as I can make. To continue on here, Buffalo got a 6th round pick for Robert Haig from Florida. 2 thumbs up. Good job in Buffalo. You managed to get a draft pick for Robert Haig. I don't know how you did it, but congratulations.
Bravo. Buffalo just getting draft picks everywhere. Jack Eichel and Robert Haig have given them 3 decent draft picks.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is Buffalo, and we've talked about Buffalo a lot on the show, and Danny, I don't know if you'll necessarily disagree. They're set up pretty well. I mean, in the aftermath of the Eichel trade, they are set up pretty well. I think this is almost very similar to what we saw with the Pacioretty trade with Montreal, where it's like, hey, this, in theory, is going to benefit both teams in the long run.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That the Eichel trade, I think, worked out for... It's one of those rare instances, including the Montreal trade, where it worked out for both. With Buffalo, you got a young guy that you can build around as your future captain in Alex Tuck, and then you have Peyton Krebs, who you can just continue to develop and, switch in between, Rochester and Buffalo, and he's he looks more comfortable day after day watching Buffalo. It's ridiculous how good he looks. And then with the Montreal trade, they may have jumped the gun in paying Nick Suzuki all that money. Probably deserved it after the playoff run. But now you're seeing the ramifications of it's Nick Suzuki and nobody else on that roster right now. So it is what it is.
Well, thank you for being our sin for the day, for not mentioning Cole Caulfield in that conversation.
There's Cole Caulfield. When you watch Montreal for as long as I did, which is 6 games too many last year, and you just they just go off the face of the planet, you're like, I'll take a break from realizing who they have at this point.
Fair enough. We'll move on to Calgary. They got a lot of their business done early, and I think that is the reason why, right off the top, it's a big win for Calgary. They are a much better team than I think we thought they would be, because for so long they were in limbo of, are you going to rebuild or not? They got the Tyler Toffoli deal done on Valentine's Day. They acquired Calle Yarncrook from Seattle on March 16th, and then yesterday picked up Ryan Carpenter in exchange for a 5th. They are currently, can't believe I'm saying this, the top team in the Pacific Division. Certainly didn't look like that might be the case earlier on in this season. I have to give Calgary a thumbs up on this. I think they are one of those teams that you look at heading into the playoffs, and I think Minnesota's in that conversation. I think the Bruins are probably in that conversation too of, man, they might just be built for the playoffs. You never know. So I think Calgary are big winners over the past month plus since Valentine's Day.
I agree. Calgary is... The thing with me about Calgary is that I can't get over that first-round series against Colorado a few years ago. And for some reason, that sticks with me so much that I'm like, do I want to believe them? And the only reason why I believe them to this point is because of Jacob Markstrom. He is literally the only reason why, if you told me Calgary was going to make a deep run, he is the one guy that I think would be the reason why. Getting to Foley was huge. Getting another Vegas Golden Knights legend in Ryan Carpenter, for some depth purposes. Former Golden Knights just going in and out. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I like what they did. They continue to surprise me, but I'm just a little too cautious to believe in them come playoff time. I don't know why. It probably that Colorado series still haunts me, but I like what they did. I just don't know yet.
Endo, my question for you regarding Calgary. There is a chance that we have 3 Canadian teams in the playoffs. Between Calgary, Edmonton, and Toronto, who makes it the furthest?
I thought you were going to say Vancouver. I was going to say, damn. That is a possibility with the way that Bruce Boudreau is carrying that team on his back with his barbecues. I think personally, I don't think Toronto's going to get past the first round again. And then, as I said on Twitter, there's going to be a riot, and Dubas is going to get rid of Marner for some guy who can fight, some like AHLer who can fight and spits on someone's grandma and works all the money for $750K a year. Probably. I think Edmonton might do it. I think Edmonton might go far this year. I don't know what it is. If it's them having Zach Hyman or having pieces actually connect together. They were on a little bit of a skid, but I see them balancing out a little bit more. I think they need to do something quick because they only have a few more years with Leon there and McDavid there being locked in. And this is the time period as well with Toronto, and they're in the same boat as well, where they have to figure out what's going on for their team because they have their identity where it's basically Leon and McDavid and then the funky bunch is the rest of them. But I think they can go far.
The Carolina Hurricanes, they didn't do too much. They re-signed Jesperi Kotkaniemi for 8 years at $4.8 million, I do believe was the number there. And in terms of a trade, they acquired Max Domi for what equates to, I think he's on 25% of his original salary. Because I think Columbus retained 50 or Florida retained 50, and then the other one retained 25.
Yeah, Columbus retained 50, Florida retained 25.
What a deal. And that was it for them. Now, they kind of walked into this deadline saying we're not going to trade a first-round pick. They already don't have their first this year. We're not going to trade one of those future two or even beyond. And at first, I'm like, well, is that the smartest move? But on the same side of the coin, like, you get Max Domi to get a little bit more offensive depth. Freddie Anderson's their guy at this point. And then defensively, right now, Ethan Bear's slotted in as a scratch, which leaves guys on their defense. Like, their third pair is apparently Brendan Smith and Ian Cole, which I look at that and I'm like, But at the same time, if you want that staunch, like, defensive, physical type of defender, those are two guys for that third pair. So I don't know if I'd give it a massive thumbs up for Carolina, but I certainly couldn't name them losers on this deadline.
Yeah, I don't think they could have really done anything without going full on, like, go for it, because they're probably in that position where you don't really need to because of that team that's currently constructed. I mean, Domi, you can throw in your middle six, and they've already got ridiculous center depth as it is, so you just throw him in there, and he'll definitely get his points depending on who he's lined up with. I'm not sure yet who he would be with, but he'll get his points. And just Anderson and that defense in general has just been stellar this year. And I think you can be fine with them not going full on, get a big name and go from there. I think they did fine.
I think it's a move where a hindsight will dictate. You look at it and say, okay, if they make it, they didn't really need much else.
Yeah.
They don't make it compared to a Florida or a Tampa who did go all in, and then you'll have that concern, I think, from that fan base of like, why couldn't we have gone for somebody else to try and push us that little bit extra further? Endo, any thoughts on your former best friend Freddie Anderson and the Carolina Hurricanes?
They didn't really need to do much, I think. They had a very, very solid team. They'd had a lot of moves in the offseason that really boosted up their core. And especially picking up Ethan Bear, which amazing signing. We picking up Ethan Bear, getting Max Domi, who I would love to have as a Leaf, but it wouldn't work out the way we would want it to work out. Great moves. It was just there's nothing wrong about what they did. Like I said, there's a safe call, very easy for them to grab them up. A lot of moves going, a lot of pieces going around, but at the same time, you gotta do something. Trade deadline was not making it easy for any GM to do anything. Good move overall.
Chicago, they were big sellers in this window.
Oh, they were.
Moving on from Brandon Hagel and 2 fourth-round picks, those going to Tampa in exchange for Taylor Radish, Boris Tkachuk, and 2 first-round picks in 2023 and 2024. They also acquired a conditional second-round pick this year that does become a first, as they dealt Marc-Andre Fleury to the Minnesota Wild. If they reach the Western Conference Final and Fleury wins 4 of the games, that does become the first, and then also sent Ryan Carpenter to Calgary for a 5th. So number one, first and foremost for Chicago, this is a win. Easily. This is a winning deadline. I mean, just for the Tampa trade alone, obviously, I don't think it's a loss for Tampa just because it's a win for Chicago, as we'll discuss. But they don't have their first-round pick this year because of Seth Jones. But they do have now 2 seconds and 3 thirds. And then, obviously, the next 2 years already, 2 first-round picks. I have my critiques of this franchise, my critiques of potentially Kyle Davidson as the GM of the team. And, it turns out Kyle Dubas has some critiques of Kyle Davidson as well. But it's a win. It's a win for Chicago. They did pretty damn good for themselves, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way that Kyle Davidson recouped those assets and even just accepting the fact that they're going into a rebuild, I don't know what that necessarily means for the core of that team and what in the world happens down the road with that group. But to get conceivably, it was difficult for Davidson to get a first for Fleury, and it might not turn out that way if Minnesota doesn't get far. But to still get a pretty decent pick out of that and to get the assets you got for Brandon Hagel, I think was a huge win for Chicago. And I'm very interested to see what this means this summer and possibly next deadline for what they want to do.
Endo, any thoughts on Kyle Dubas's best friend and his hockey team?
I think this is really funny that they were both going head to head when that trade that was really supposed to happen, with a whole bunch of pieces going from each team. Us giving them, I think it's Matthew Knies, and then another player, and then a first round for Hagel and Fleury, and I think it was like a second or something like that. That was hilarious because Dubas basically went like, dude, what the fuck, man? Like, you can't be telling me secrets like that. It's not nice. Like, that kind of thing.
He learned from Lou Lamoriello.
Yeah.
If details of discussions get out, the deal is off. Which is why who was it? Zach Parise never ended up as a member of the Leafs like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yep. And it's also why Hagel was traded away, another deal. And I think this is a big move, not only just for Redacted, but I think it's good for Fleury as well to go to a team that definitely needed some sort of extra cushion and support for a playoff push, as well. Hagel going over to, I think he went over to was it Tampa? Yeah, went over to Tampa. They were like the Kings, like within the past like 5 years. Both teams in Florida have gotten so good. We'll get to those later, but they've just gotten so well and so quickly. But yeah, Chicago, big moves right there, acknowledging that they're going to have to do a rebuild, not a retooling. I wonder what's going to happen with Kane and Taves, if they're going to go anywhere or they're going to stick it out and just kind of ride their careers there. I mean, not to relate it back to a Leaf scenario, but when we had Phil Kessel here, was the Phil Seats. We're going to have them around just to keep that competitiveness or to help them build up the new talent that's coming through. It all depends. But all I know is that Alex DeBrincat needs to be captain of that franchise as soon as possible because he's the true leader and he is the future of this franchise.
Yeah, it'll be Seth Jones. The Colorado, you gotta give it to the guy who's there the longest. That's how it works. The Colorado Avalanche, another winner at this deadline. Obviously, again, they picked up Josh Manson. They dealt Nico Sturm for Tyson Jost from Minnesota just to free up some cap. Acquired Arturi Lehkonen for prospect Justin Barron and a second, which I think a lot of Habs fans are excited about. We'll talk more about that when we get to Montreal. And also acquired Andrew Cogliano for a fifth. They stocked up. They did what they had to do. You get, in a sense, these role guys that can really push a team over the edge. Like, you look at that third line now, which is slotted to be Arturi Lehkonen, Alex Newhook, and JT Compher. It might not be... like, Lehkonen and Compher probably aren't the biggest names in the world, but to have two guys like that, both 26 years old, with that experience to help insulate another potential young star like Alex Newhook, they have depth up and down the lineup. They get another, the average height of Colorado's defense right now. And granted, it is because guys like Sam Girard, Ryan Murray, and Bowen Byram are out injured. But, you start off 6'1" and 5'11" for Taves and Makar. Okay, that's nothing too crazy. 6'1" and 6'3", Jack Johnson and Josh Manson. And third pair, 6'5" and 6'4", Curtis McDermott and Eric Johnson. Might not be the most skilled, but they'll beat you up. Mm-hmm. And that's what Colorado has. They have the ability to, outskill you. They have the ability to beat you up. It's a win for them here for this particular deadline. The rich get richer was kind of the theme, I think, of this trade deadline, and Colorado applies.
Yeah, that Lehkonen trade I did not expect at all to go to Colorado. That was probably to me, that was probably the biggest shock of the final hour. The biggest thing with Colorado over the last few years was, do they have enough depth? And over the last few years, they have addressed that depth tenfold to take the pressure off that top line. And you add Lehkonen in, that if that third line is really what it is, man, that team is going to be so much of a pain in the ass to pay, more than they already are. And if that's your third line, that's ridiculous. And, the fact that I can't remember who it was there. Are they without Rantanen or is it Landeskog right now?
Landeskog,
okay.
Who's out right
now. So they're out with Landeskog. Gerard's probably another few weeks out, and yet they still find a way to win games. It's just ridiculous how deep this team is.
Endo, I imagine you'd concur, so we can just move on to our next team.
Fuck! Yeah.
There you go. Stanley Cup favorites for a reason in Colorado. The Columbus Blue Jackets didn't do much. It was only the Domi trade where they acquired prospect Aiden Hreschuk from the Carolina Hurricanes. You could sit there and look at a team like this that's on the outs and say, well, why didn't they do more? But the problem is they really don't have that many pieces that they'd be likely to move. I mean, Line is an RFA. They obviously want to keep him around. You're probably not going to get much for Jack Roslovic at this stage, which pretty much leaves the only options UFA-wise were Jonas Korpisalo, who I can't imagine is an ideal target for too many teams, and Dean Kukan. Like, that's it. And he was really the only name that was out there to get moved. So, Columbus, pretty inactive. Just indifference. There's really not too much to talk about.
Yeah,
with the Columbus Blue Jackets.
They've already established they're going with the youth, and that youth is already ridiculously good. And I can only imagine what's going to happen in the next couple of years with that group. I did hear rumblings about Korpisalo to Vegas like earlier in the weekend, but I didn't think it was going to materialize once Logan Thompson played as well as he did, and I don't know if that would have really benefited Vegas unless it was a change of scenery and you hope you get the guy that, nearly beat Tampa all by himself a couple of years ago in the bubble. So I don't know if that would have actually came to fruition, but not surprising that ultimately he didn't get moved.
We'll move on here. We'll kind of pick up the pace as we will, because some of these teams, again, there's just not too much to say. The Dallas Stars acquired Scott Wedgwood from Arizona, primarily due to the fact that Braden Holtby's health is in question, and a late deal getting Vladislav Nemesnikov from the Detroit Red Wings, which I think is a decent little pickup. Again, Dallas is right there on the edge, though, so I understand not wanting to maybe push it too much to go for it and make sure you get into the playoffs. But at the same time, I mean, granted, he just re-signed, but Joe Pavelski's 37. Sagan and Ben are both over 30 now, Sagan is 30. So it just makes you wonder, like, okay, is this patience going to pay off to say, hey, if we make it this year, cool. If we don't, then, hey, we'll address it moving forward. I don't know. I look at this team and it's like, you did have the opportunity to add a little bit more than you did, and you did have the opportunity to sell. I mean, UFAs included the likes of Alex Radulov, who isn't what he used to be. John Klingberg was obviously the really big name out there. So I don't know how to feel about Dallas. I think they're one of those teams where it's like, hey, we'll wait and see if they make the playoffs or not.
Yeah, pretty much. I think ultimately I was surprised they didn't move on from Klingberg. Like, I thought they would eventually do that, but I mean, you had Nemesnikov, he goes to your third line probably, and yeah, I mean, Dallas is really surprising a lot of people right now, and the fact that Jake Ottinger is playing the well as he is, and they've able to kind of solidify that goalie position, without Braden Holtby and Anton Khudobin, I think is a huge win. And to get Wedgwood, who had a few good starts this year, I think is fine. They're right there, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's another instance where if they get to the playoffs, cool, we'll see what happens when we get there, and if they go on another run, but it should be interesting with Dallas.
Well, as Endo knows, though, they have my favorite player in the league and one Jason Robertson.
Love Jason Robertson.
I don't necessarily want it to be at Vegas' expense, but at the same time, I want to see Jason Robertson in a playoff situation.
I'd love it. I'd be all for that.
Fair enough. Detroit, a couple of quick moves from Steve Yzerman, but tidy business as always. 4th round pick for Nemesnikov, a 7th for Troy Stetcher, and then was able to get Oscar Sundqvist, Jake Wallman, and a 2nd next year from St. Louis for Luke Witkowski and Nick Leddy on 50% retained salary. It's these type of moves that make Steve Yzerman what he is. It's not always, trading for first or seconds. Granted, it was a second rounder here. He'll find a way to make this look, I think, even worse than it already does for the Blues.
Yeah.
It's Steve Yzerman.
Yeah. I mean, that's two pretty solid depth pieces from St. Louis that he was able to poach. And it's just another instance of that mind control, hypno type of thing that Steve Yzerman tends to do every year that he has eventually passed on to Julien Brisebois. So it's just madness. But yeah, I like what Detroit did. I like, obviously, the direction they're going is well up there, and it should be interesting how they navigate the next couple of years.
Endo, I know you threw the idea out to our good buddy Timo, noted graphic designer and streamer. I know you threw the idea out there after your tweet of Who's My Daddy, and Evgeny Dadonov story, and wanting a graphic made for that. I want a graphic of Steve Yzerman as the Hypnotoad from Futurama.
Oh my God.
I think it's very applicable.
I was going to say, like, in every meeting for whenever Stevie Y makes a trade, he holds up and he's like, "You will give me a second round pick. You will give me a second round pick." For people who are listening to the audio version of the podcast, I picked up a little thing that I have on my microphone and just held it up like a magician trying to hypnotize someone. Just, "You will give me a second round pick, conditional, at least conditional, but still a second round pick." He is setting the standard for fleecing, wheeling, stealing, and dealing tricks.
Okay, now I want Steve Yzerman as Ric Flair. Robe and all.
Woo!
Pulling out of a limo.
Pick stealing. Wheeling dealing.
Oh, God.
Cap circumventing,
God.
son of a gun. Woo!
Goodness. I'm glad we talked about Dallas and kind of did the format this way. As again, we'll still try to pick up the pace here because I don't want to take up too much of Danny's time today.
Going on?
Fair enough. The Edmonton Oilers, unlike the Dallas Stars, who you're like, okay, I can understand not fully committing. They acquired Brett Kulak from Montreal for William Lagesson, a conditional second, which is a second no matter what, and a seventh. And they also acquired Derek Brassard for a fourth round pick. Man, I just don't know. I don't know. Like, I look at this Oilers team and it's like, I just, can you really afford? Like, I do like the Brett Kulak pickup a lot and think he instantly becomes one of the better defenders on that team. Derek Brassard, we kind of know what he is at this point. He's still, like, kind of along the mold of what they already have with, like, a Devin Shore and a Derek Ryan. It's just, like, you could say they already added Evander Kane through circumstances that they did. I still look at this team and I'm like, I don't believe you. I do not believe that this team has enough. Not even close. Even with the additions they made, if Colorado did nothing, you still look at Colorado and Vegas if they're fully healthy they're all, the Oilers have McDavid. They have Draisaitl and, other solid pieces. Obviously, Evander Kane on the ice is a very solid player still. Zach Hyman. I just don't believe them. They're still going. They are still, here's the best way to sum it up, still going into the playoffs with Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith as their presumed two goaltenders. And then maybe you throw Stuart Skinner to the Wolves. I can't believe them.
Edmonton is going about things backwards. And what I mean by that is that you look at their draft picks for next year, don't have a second, don't have a third, don't have a fourth. But they still have their first round pick. And I feel like if you've got your first round pick for the next three drafts, if you are trying to actually maximize the contention window with your two MVPs, you do whatever it takes. And for some reason, Ken Holland has gone about this in a backwards way that I don't understand. You're absolutely right, Tougie. They don't have the goaltending to get them far enough. And that want to say Mikko Koskinen will kind of get it together and he'll have a strong finish to the season. I still wouldn't trust him in a 7-game series. I'm sure as hell not trusting Mike Smith in a 7-game series, and I'm definitely not ready to throw Stuart Skinner to the Wolves. I don't know what it is with Edmonton and their planning of roster management. It is still a backwards ideology that they have.
The Florida Panthers.
Oh boy, here we go.
You summed it up perfectly for Edmonton.
I was gonna say for Edmonton, don't care. We got Vander Kane for free, basically. Ratio plus you fell off plus still got our first round pick.
Yeah, there you go. The Florida Panthers screwed everybody over this deadline. They started off by moving cap space to send Frankie Vetrano to the New York Rangers for a 4th. They acquired Ben Sherratt for a 1st, prospect Ty Smolenic and a 4th. That is the deal, of course, that threw everything off. They acquired Claude Giroux, because of course they did. German Rubtsov, Connor Bunnaman in the 5th, for Owen Tippett a 3rd and a 1st. Robert Haig for a 6th, and then also acquired Yegor Korshkov, Leafs legend, and a 6th rounder involved in the Domi deal. They got their guy, and I'll save my thoughts from the Philadelphia side of things on the Giroux trade for a little bit later on, but this is a team. Number one, they don't have any of their first-round picks over the next 3 years. Yes. Go for it. That is how you do it. Oh, well, with this first-round pick, he might be ready in a year, like Moritz Seider. More likely than not, he will not be. So why bother? Your window is open now. Their top 6 is Verhaeghe, Barkov, Giroux, Huberdeau, Bennett, Duclair, with Sam Reinhart on the 3rd line. They went for it. And, a little bit of concern about Ekblad and his health, but, Ben Sherratt, as long and coincidentally he is in a first pair role right now, with Uyghur apparently, but Ben Sherratt isn't going to be called upon to be the guy next to Shea Weber or Jeff Petrie. They're going for it, and I respect that. Much like Tampa, who we'll talk about. They are going for it. Do it. None of this Boston, we dipped the toe into the pool and said that we went for a swim. Go for a swim rather than saying you tried.
Yeah.
And the Florida Panthers are taking advantage of those warm waters, and who knew cats could swim? I didn't know how to wrap that up.
But the first 3 names you dropped, Verhaeghe, Barkov, Giroux, are you kidding me? That is a fantasy draft type of first line that you just went out and basically, we obviously don't know the whole finishing picture of Owen Tippett, but man alive, that Owen Tippett got you that first line. That is insane.
Yeah.
The Sherratt deal obviously broke everyone's brain. I think it's still kind of in the ether of what in the world was that. But I mean, put him next to Uyghur. I don't think that's a bad thing. And then, again, Sam Reinhart's on your 3rd line. This team is set. You're talking about a team that needed to go for it in a market that desperately wants this team to do well. That team just personified what you needed to do at the deadline to, 1, put faith in your organization, and 2, put faith in your fan base to start putting more people in seats in that arena.
Yeah. I mean, that's why in the aftermath of the 2013 final loss to Chicago with the Bruins, I wasn't upset. I was upset in the moment, but the idea of I wish we had a first-round pick. No. They went for it. The team on the ice botched it, but they went for it. And then, you deal with the consequences later because, oh no, consequences. Yeah, the consequences aren't that difficult to deal with if you have a Stanley Cup to look at. Mm-hmm. I should mention on that 3rd line with Sam Reinhart, who has 60 points in 59 games, by the way, there is a 3rd liner by the name of Mason Marchman. Endo Mills. Leafs legend Mason Marchman, who has 35 points in 37 games.
I'm telling you, I've said it 100 times. There are so many prospects in that Maple Leafs development pool who go on to play amazing in other teams because they're just caught in this pipeline of just like, because the Leafs have so much talent on paper. It's just that they just don't execute. That's it. Send tweet.
So 2 big thumbs up for the Panthers. The LA Kings did not do much.
Yeah.
They shuffled some deck chairs, basically. And in a sense, they're kind of in that Dallas boat where, although right now the Stars are in, or the Stars are in that, just on the bubble outside looking in. The Kings are in second in the Pacific Division. But I understand not wanting to go for it. I mean, UFA is you have Stetcher, who they acquired, Olimata, Alex Edler. So, I mean, even if you elected to sell, you're not going to get too much. The days of Alex Edler being rumored for like a first plus from Boston are over. And then Dustin Brown is a UFA and Andreas Athanasiou. You might as well hold on to who you have. Yeah. You're probably not going to get too much back for selling. And I can understand not wanting to add too much. You can always say, well, if you add, you never know. But with some of the prices that were out there, this is a team that still has all of their first and second round picks over the next 3 years. They already have a good prospect pool. Ride it out and see what happens, and it's just kind of bonus money the further you make it.
Oh, yeah. And that's obviously been the biggest surprise of this division. And Arvidsson has been such a insanely good pickup. Like, only watching him live twice so far, he is a huge difference maker on that group. And it's insane how much his speed combined with Athanasiou has kind of morphed that middle six into how good it is. But obviously right now they're dealing with injuries, Arvidsson being one of them. Brown's on IR. Drew Doughty, who knows when he's coming back. Brendan Lemieux's on IR, and then you got Matt Roy is on IR too. Like they're banged up and they're somehow kind of hanging afloat with where they are. So I'm kind of surprised they didn't go out and get maybe an insurance piece to help with that lineup. But at the same time, I mean, they're surprising everyone right now.
The Minnesota Wild, very, very busy team this month. There was the Tyson Jost acquisition, a third-round pick for Nick Delorier. They brought in a second for Jack McBain, though, so it offsets that hurt a little bit. They acquired Jacob Middleton, an interesting name that was out there. They got him for goaltender Capo Kakkonen and a fifth-rounder this year, while then also sending a second-round pick, conditional, maybe a first, to Chicago for Marc-Andre Fleury. And then right at the deadline, right at the buzzer, they offset Victor Rask's salary, $4 million for 1 year. The rest of this year they retain $2 million of it and send him to the Seattle Kraken. I mean, honestly, I think they did pretty good. Jacob Middleton was playing really good hockey in San Jose, and you now have a tandem of Marc-Andre Fleury and Cam Talbot in goal. You could maybe have wanted them to pick up another piece up front. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, hey, Nick Delorier, he should be good enough. So, and in a sense, maybe they had their own kind of pickup from within, because I think Matt Boldy stepped into this lineup faster than you would have expected, and he has 24 points in 30 games.
Pretty good. Pretty good. I mean, Nick Delorier scored last night, so clearly they're already reaping the benefits off the return of Nick Delorier in one game has already scored a goal for the Minnesota Wild and has dragged William Karlsson out of the crease by his sweater all the way to the blue line. Like that already is.
I missed that.
Oh my God, it was great. Yeah, they're already reaping the benefits of that. But obviously Fleury, that's the big one. And I was kind of surprised. I mean, I know Minnesota was reportedly involved like toward the waning hours. I thought the way that Cam Talbot played, I thought they were going to completely go in a different direction. I didn't think they were actually going to finish that off, and he's won 6 straight starts. But clearly, it looks like he's not going to be the guy going forward, going into the playoffs, if you're just going to get the reigning Vezina Trophy winner for a draft pick. So I'm interested to see how Fleury looks in front of that defense, and if that defense can kind of shore things up a little bit. That's going to be so much better for Fleury. I know Chicago started playing a little bit better in front of him before the deadline, but that defense, knowing how well they are at just stoning dudes at the blue line in the neutral zone, it's got to make life a little bit easier for Fleury. So I'm interested to see how that pans out.
The Montreal Canadiens got a haul for Ben Sherratt. Justin Barron in a second for Arturi Lehkonen. Nate Schnarr for Andrew Hammond. That is what it is. And then, of course, also picked up another second for Brett Kulak. I am a gigantic fan of Kent Hughes at this point. It is amazing just how much the tone around this team has changed just from the appointment of Kent Hughes and Martin St. Louis. It went from doom and gloom, this team is boned, to, maybe not, because they have, let's see, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 3 thirds, 3 fourths this year, 2 first-round picks next year, and they might not be done kind of offloading pieces. This is... It's scary. I'll say that for Habs fans. It's scary because you have a GM that is obviously, as a former agent, going to be a great negotiator, and you have a coach with an already young team who is clearly instilling confidence in this group. And in terms of the idea of building a culture, anybody else that joins that team over the next few years, Montreal, by the end of this decade, is going to be very, very scary. And that might not be what Habs fans want to hear after making the Cup final last year, is, hey, you got to wait a couple of years to be good again. I would be very happy. Kent Hughes, Martin St. Louis, and then Jeff Gorton, above Kent Hughes. That seems like it's going to be a winning combination. I want to say sooner rather than later, even if it does kind of take a little bit for it to work itself out, but... just continuing down a really good path for the Habs. It's a big thumbs up for them.
And imagine the haul they can get for Jeff Petrie if they still unload him.
Maybe not as much as it would have been at the beginning of the year.
That's fair. I think the way that he started playing under St. Louis, you could probably get maybe a little bit more if you want to capitalize off of that. But there might be something there if you want to offload on Petrie. But they are set up really well. Obviously, they're set up in their top 6 for years to come. And then who knows what happens with Carey Price beyond this year with their number 1 goaler, as you would say. So I'm interested to see how this team kind of builds over the next few years, especially through the draft, and if they can get a few more picks for offloading a few more guys. Montreal is going to be very interesting.
Endo, any thoughts on the Habs?
It's gonna be they already got a lot of picks coming through. Their talent's doing a lot better as well. But with the way they're playing, they may not win the lottery and get Shane Wright, which would be hilarious. Because at first it was like, oh, we're gonna do well. Then it was, oh crap, we're gonna get Shane Wright, and it's like, oh crap, we're winning games. I thought we were tanking. What the heck's going on? I wouldn't be surprised if for the last 5 games or something they somehow bring up Carey Price through and have him play. And again, you have to look at their cap situation too, because they have 0 space right now. Apparently, their projected cap is 0. Their current space is 12 mil, but it'd be crazy just to see Carey Price play 1 game into the season. That Bell Center will be absolutely packed, packed complete, just to have him come back.
Montreal, Seattle, Arizona, all currently on 44 points at the bottom of the standings. So who knows?
There can only be one.
Nashville gave up a 2nd-round pick for Jeremy Lauzon. Don't understand that. Also brought in Alex Biega. Again, another team kind of like the Kings, where I'm a little bit surprised they didn't do more. But at the same time, I guess you could understand it due to some uncertainties, they've yet to re-sign Philip Forsberg and did not move him at the deadline. They could just be viewing it as, hey, we're playing with house money because we are much, much better. UC Saros is amazing. They are much, much better than they probably ever expected to be this year.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty much the only reason why they didn't go out and get anybody else. I mean, Forsberg... 35 goals now, which is a Predators record, by the way, which is the most ridiculous thing for that franchise. And somehow along the way, Matt Duchene has turned back the clock and has looked like he's playing up to that contract. Like, I don't think anybody expected that. And of course, Saros has been playing like a Vezina finalist this year. So
That's my king.
he has been unreal. Yeah, I like Nashville. I like where they're going. They can kind of they're right there with Minnesota, I think, for that third spot in the Central, and that race is going to be very interesting. It's ironically enough, it's going to come down to goaltending at the end.
Devils fans, not too much to say to you. You guys didn't do anything aside from acquiring Andrew Hammond, which is what it is. But honestly, there's not really too much they could do. RFA is in Jesper Bratt, Pavel Zacha, UFA. Basically, the only UFA was PK Subban, and even PK Subban at $4.5 million isn't all that appetizing for teams. So they were kind of stuck in a situation where it's like, yeah, we just got to wait it out and see what happens. And unfortunately, they've been a little bit worse, I'd say primarily due to injuries, than I think they expected to be this year.
Yeah, they're just there. I agree. There's really nothing there for New Jersey. Maybe next year. Maybe the year after that. Maybe the year after that. Who knows?
The New York Islanders also did absolutely nothing. I mean, they extended Cal Clutterbuck and Zach Parise, but they didn't do anything either. No attempt to move Zdeno, or maybe there was an attempt, but no success on moving, like, even a Zdeno Chara or Andy Green for anything. So very surprised at that, too, to see so little movement from the Islanders. But again, in that spot of, well, what are we going to do? Move someone who has term? Like, this is kind of just an off year for us where they didn't expect to be this bad.
Yeah, and I know Varlamov was another option that they were probably looking to move. But yeah, they were just in that weird situation where they had that long road trip to begin the season before their arena opened up, and they really never recovered once they got into the building. And that team is too good to keep down for a long period of time. So I think keep the team as is and run it back next year and see how much better they can be.
The New York Rangers acquired Frank Vetrano, getting Jacob Trouba's childhood best friend. That picture was incredible. One of the sneaky good moves at the deadline, Justin Braun from Philadelphia for a third. Then the big deal for Andrew Kopp, which, to be honest, I mean, Morgan Barron in 2 seconds. I mean, granted, one of the seconds can be a first. I still don't think it's that bad. And they got Tyler Mott for a 4th-round pick. I think the Rangers are big winners of this deadline because I didn't trust that defense. Justin Braun helps a lot, take a lot of pressure off of the younger guys. And getting guys like Kopp, Vetrano, and Mott address some of the depth issues that I think were glaring for that team. Like, here's our stars, and then, there's not too much else. I mean, no disrespect to the likes of Dryden Hunt and Greg McKegg, Bruins and Leafs legend. But, yeah, no, the Rangers are huge winners at this deadline.
Yeah, and the most important thing is they got guys that fit Gerard Gallant's style. Like, Vetrano is a speedy guy who can kind of break the game open in the middle six, and then Kopp is a guy that get the puck on his stick and watch him go, and then Tyler Mott's a very physical grinder of a 4th-line guy. Those are exactly the kind of guys that Gerard Gallant wants on that team, and that's absolutely fits his style. So definitely, and Justin Braun, too, for a third-pairing guy. Can't say that the Rangers did bad in this one. They did really well in the deadline.
Yeah. Good. And no, I'm not really throwing to you because I'm like, yeah, I think we're just all kind of in agreement with these teams. Like, there's not too much room to be divisive. And don't worry, your moment's coming with Toronto. Your moment's coming.
Thumbs up all the way, boys. Don't worry. I'm here. It's all good.
Oh, God. I will want to get your thoughts on Ottawa, though. They sent a 3rd-round pick this year to Vancouver for Travis Hamonic, who was immediately thrown under the bus of the media with a headline that said that his teammates were celebrating the fact that he got traded. And I've never really seen a headline like that to that extent of Travis Hamonic traded, players rejoice. I mean, even when Evander Kane left the Sharks, you didn't even really see a headline like that.
Gotta love Canadian sports media. Anything about Ottawa, fuck it. Just whatever. Just shit on them. It's great. God, that is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Is it because of certain views? Probably. I don't know. I don't think he was a big freedom convoy wet dreamer, as I like to call it. is that what like he was proud of? Like, I don't know. Like, I personally don't care.
I don't even know if it's worth speculating because, like, and the only thing I ever heard about Travis Hamonic was what a good guy he was when he was with the Islanders. Like, he even had that little E60 special about, like, hey, here he is, and like the program he has with kids and stuff like that. So, I have no idea. They got Matthew Joseph in the fourth for Nick Paul, who they couldn't agree to terms with on a new contract. They were successfully able to trade Josh Brown to the Bruins. Picked up Michael McNiven for future considerations, and got a 5th-round pick for Zach Sanford. It was okay. Didn't trade Chris Tierney, although I don't know what the market would be. The biggest thing is just like, you gave up a 3rd for Travis Hamonic, huh? When you could have had him, I believe, on waivers earlier this season.
Yeah, Ottawa's just a team. I mean that's to steal Pierre Dorian's or Eugene Melnick's whoever said that. They're there right now, and you start to wonder, when are they going to start turning the corner with that young talent on their roster, and then they go out and have a lackluster deadline. I don't know. I mean, they're such a weird group. They're just weird.
The Philadelphia Flyers. 4th-round pick for Derek Brassard, 3rd-round pick for Justin Braun, and of course the elephant in the room is the Claude Giroux trade. Good luck trying to find a team for like Yandel or Martin Jones. My biggest takeaway from this, and I said I'd mention it when we were talking about the Panthers side of things, from a negotiating standpoint, I'm surprised the Flyers didn't get more than just Tippett, a 1st and a 3rd. Now, you could say, well, Claude Giroux basically put it boldly, I'm only going to Florida. I don't want to go to Boston and the New York Rangers. My presumption for that, and I'm just, trying to make sense of 2 and 2, didn't necessarily want to break the hearts of the fans by going to a direct rival. That seems to be what it likely would have been, because it seems to be almost location-based. Didn't want to go to Colorado. So, okay, Florida makes sense. I just don't understand, because you would, in a normal situation, you would almost say, okay, well, the power goes to the Panthers because the Panthers know that Giroux only wants to go there. But in a sense, I feel like for Chuck Fletcher, you kind of threw away some power here. It's not, the Panthers have the power because Giroux only wants to go there. It's, the Flyers have the power because the Panthers know that Giroux only wants to go there, and Florida gets to look at what a Tampa's doing and what another team's doing, and it's on Florida to make this deal because they need Claude Giroux. They want him. They need him. He completes that team. And the Panthers gave up a prospect who really wasn't getting it done at the NHL level, a 1st and a 3rd. Who cares? We're going forward anyway.
Yeah, that's pretty much my takeaway too. You know where he wants to go. Why are you not trying to bring more back? Like again, the book is not necessarily closed on Owen Tippett, but is he someone that's going to come in and just start scoring 40 goals for you in the next 4 or 5 years? That's probably not. And that's pretty much, you just replaced the face of your franchise for however many years on hope. And that's kind of been the yin and the yang when it comes to the Flyers over the last couple of years. Is they banked on Carter Hart to kind of elevate where he was in the bubble. That didn't happen. And now they're kind of in a position where they have guys that have definitely underperformed, and they haven't been able to kind of maximize or take advantage of that time in the bubble. And that's come back to haunt them. And now they go into an era without Claude Giroux, and you have to hope that Owen Tippett is the guy that's going to eventually revitalize your franchise. And he could. The chances are not that great, though.
They're interstate rivals in Pittsburgh. 7th-round pick for Nathan Beaulieu. Ricard Raquel for, as I mentioned before, Simone, Aston Reese, Klang in a second. They get better, especially with Ricard Raquel. They didn't have to give up a 1st-round pick to do it. The Penguins, by the way, have all 3 of their next 1st-round picks. They haven't given away any of them. Ron Hextall, I think, when he was first appointed, people were like, I don't know. This Raquel move was incredibly shrewd, and now you're talking About a top 9 of Gensel, Crosby, Rodriguez, Raquel, Malkin, Rust, Heinen, Carter, Kapanen. They are just as dangerous as they've probably ever been.
Yeah. And putting Raquel with probably Malkin, right? That's...
Yeah.
Whew, man alive. That team, just when you're ready to throw the dirt on them and just move on, Tristan Jarry becomes a ridiculously good goalie again, and that top 9 is just insane. That they've done it again. They've done it again.
Oh, Endo, isn't it great to see other Eastern Conference teams really going for it when they have a solid core?
Oh yeah, it's great. I'd appreciate it if our guys were to do the same thing. But that's nature of the business. Remember, if it's too hard of a job to do, then just take a day off when it comes to the biggest day of the season. Tool up. I think the second biggest day is when the college season ends, so you can coach the college talent that you have on your team. But
yeah,
I don't know. Congrats to the Pens for being dangerous and sliding themselves up as a possible contender, more than they already were before. This is
second in the Metro right now.
Yeah, yeah.
God, it's awful, isn't it?
It's
awful. San Jose dealt Jacob Middleton for Capo Kakkonen in the 5th, which was a little bit bizarre. Acquired Anthony Potato for Nick Merkley, 5th rounder for Cogliano, and swapped Antoine Morand, or Alexei Melnichuk, a goalie for Antoine Morand from Tampa. An interesting one. Obviously, they elected to re-sign Tomas Hertl. They didn't really have big names that they could look to move. I just find it interesting in goal. They have Reimer signed through next year at $2.25. Aiden Hill signed for just a shade under 2.2 next year, and then Capo Kakkonen's going to be an RFA. Makes you wonder, one of those three has to go at some point this offseason. You'd probably ponder it will be James Reimer at 34 years old.
Yeah, the Middleton deal kind of shocked me because for the whole weekend we were talking. There were talks of him getting such a big haul for his cap hit, and that a lot of teams could use a top 4 kind of guy. But you get Capo Kakkonen out of it, and I do like Kakkonen a lot, and he's probably someone who at least you can, you have his rights and you can have him as your goalie of the future, which San Jose needs a goalie of the future in some capacity after what happened the last few years, so I don't necessarily blame them for that. But yeah, I like the move there. I thought they could have probably gotten a little bit more from Middleton from what everyone was saying, but I do like the Kakkonen pickup.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I mean, Aiden Hill and Kakkonen are both 25.
Yeah.
So you have two guys who knows. For Seattle, let's just I'll leave it at this because it's way too much to recap. Holy God. They traded Calle Arncrook, Mark Giordano, Colin Blackwell, Jeremy Lozon, Mason Appleton, Marcus Johansson, and acquired Victor Rask, Daniel Sprong, and 17 million draft picks. The best way to sum this up for Seattle is that they made up for lost time at the expansion draft. They now have, this year, 1 first, 4 seconds, a third, and 3/4. Next year, 1 first, 3 seconds, 2 thirds, 3/4. And then in 2024, they have 2 thirds because they have Toronto's third. Look, we can criticize the Seattle Kraken and how they handled this expansion draft, if they should have gone for more of a Vegas approach because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, Jesus, I still look at the Columbus deal. Why don't you take Max Domi? Gavin Bayreuther's right there. He gets taken, goes right back to Columbus. Max Domi's there. Look at what he went for. You would have gotten more for dealing Max Domi. I do not understand. But in terms of this deadline, did they do well based off of where they set themselves up to go? Yes, they did.
It's backwards Vegas. That's essentially it, right? It's backwards Vegas. I was definitely of either the majority or the minority, depending on how you look at it, that I really wanted Seattle to just go all in, full-on nuclear in the expansion draft and just get whoever they could and somehow fit it under the cap, whether it was James Van Riemsdyk or Carey Price, Tarasenko, whoever you want, just go out and do it. And it was just such an underwhelming thing. And now that they've got a bajillion draft picks out of it, do they just bolster the farm system when they go to Palm Springs? Do they use those picks to get surefire talent because you're going to be in the running for Shane Wright. So, what is the plan here? I guess for Ron Francis, that's my biggest question.
It might work out, but yeah, I don't know what to make of it at all. Speaking of not knowing what to make of it, the St. Louis Blues, their only move was that Nick Leddy acquisition. I mean, they have all their picks. You could have dealt David Perron if you wanted to. He was pretty much the only guy that you could really look to move. The Blues are currently in the first wild card spot in the West. So, again, we talked about it. What exactly do you do? But I do not see how Nick Leddy is the guy to really bolster that defense, because that was the idea. Oh, he'll come into Detroit and kind of help stabilize things. And I mean, he has 16 points in 55 games. But, you know, in terms of like, oh, he can be a play driver, it's like, are Krug and Falk already not doing that to a good enough extent? Like, I don't know. I don't know. This was a very weird move. I don't know what to make of St. Louis at all right now.
Yeah, neither do I. And especially with their goaltending, I think that's another big thing. It's like, do you really want to commit to Jordan Binnington right now, or do you really trust what Ville Husso's doing right now and kind of go, tit for tat with that? So I was kind of surprised they didn't make like another move to get like another middle six guy, at least a guy that you can, put the puck in the back of the net. I firmly believe that if they were going to move David Perron, it would have been shocking. I feel like he'll retire there at this point. So I think he'll eventually get another deal there. So, yeah, St. Louis is weird. They're that team where you know that they're going to play well come playoff time, but do they have enough to get it done? I don't know. They're a very odd team.
Endo, I'll defer to you on this one first, but the Tampa Bay Lightning acquired Brandon Hagel, Nick Paul, Riley Nash. How frustrating is it? Especially when we know that odds are one of our two favorite teams gets to play the Tampa Bay Lightning, gets the honor of losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning in round one. I mean, this, again, like, why not go for it if you're them? Like, someone like Andre Palat's probably out the door at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. They have a legitimate chance at a three-peat.
Yeah.
Legitimate. And that is horrifying.
Like, the fact that they're going all in, significant, whatever the fucking word is. I can't even speak right now. I'm exhausted. It's significant. There we go. Excuse me. And their status of being like that good of a franchise. I said when you're streaming yesterday that if they do get another cup, that's a dynasty right there. Like, they're a borderline dynasty right now with how they're playing and whatever they've been able to do with like an asterisk or whatever with the cap situation. Now everyone's doing it. Like, I think one of the comments about Ken Hughes on the phone was like, oh, so now everyone cares about the cap, huh? When they had meetings about like the cap situation and everything. Now everyone's using LTIR. I mean, y'all agreed to it. There was only like two teams that didn't agree to it, and they don't even use the LTIR stuff now. But now everyone does it, so it's fine. Take a mid-season surgery. It's okay. It's all cool. Back to Tampa. Big acquisitions just to get the depth up a little bit on their team, and they have like what? They only have like their first round, and they have like a fourth from.
They have. Yeah, so they have their first, a fourth from Chicago, no second or third round pick this year, missing their first and second next year, and their first in 2024.
I mean, granted, with the talent they have and the development they're having right now, they don't even need it. Honestly, I'm gonna quickly run to the washroom, run to the kitchen and get some water.
We'll save Toronto for last. Don't worry. We'll get up to Toronto for when you're here.
Yeah, perfect. BRB.
Danny. Tampa. I mean, what can even be said?
I think I said this to Darren Millard the other day. It's that time of the year where the Tampa Bay Lightning just go, we don't care what we have, and we're just going to go out and just poach whatever player we think is going to fit in that middle six and just go for it. And it goes back to what? A few years ago when they got Blake Coleman. Mm-hmm. And then last year, who did they go
Goodrow.
Out? Okay, Goodrow. Yeah. And then they go out and get all of these pieces that they can just slide right into their lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And they still have 7 draft picks this year. They have a full slate of 7 draft picks. Even if you don't have a third and a fourth, you have enough to like still replenish your stock cabinet here. It's just crazy what Tampa Bay has been able to do.
Their forwards: Palat, Point, Cirelli, Kaloran, Stamkos, Kucherov, Paul, Colton, Hagel, Maroon, Belmar, Perry.
That is unfair.
It's a video game.
It is a video game. That is very unfair, and God bless either Boston or Toronto that have to play those guys in the first round. It is. Yeah. Oh my God.
Even though Endo's back, we'll still save Toronto for last. So we'll skip ahead to Vancouver. They got rid of Hamonic for a third. They picked up Dermott for a third, so kind of evens out and is an improvement outright. And dealt Tyler Mott for a fourth. They didn't go full fire sale. They obviously didn't add, which I think is a smart move. And in terms of fire selling, there really wasn't too much. They also claimed Brad Richardson on waivers. So honestly, not bad. They might make it, they might not, but I think it was kind of the smart move. There wasn't going to be this kind of short-term movement, I think. Like, all eyes are kind of on Brock Besser as an RFA, but that does really seem like an off-season move.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they're another one of those teams where they're kind of exceeding expectations under Boudreau, and you kind of just roll with it. And if they make the playoffs, great. They probably won't last long, but at least you've got something rolling with this group with Boudreau if you can kind of string this season over to next. So, yeah, I didn't expect them to add too much or if any at all, so I'd say it was fine.
Washington acquired Marcus Johansson and Johan Larsson for a total of Daniel Sprong, a third, fourth, and sixth. I look at Washington still, and I still see a team that could win a Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, actually, before we went to Washington, I looked at the reason why Hamonic was viewed as good thing he's gone.
Now, to avoid slander, is this an official thing or a rumored thing on a Twitter or Reddit?
This is an actual statement that was released. This is from Canucks Army, and it was related on several articles as well. Okay. To quote, where is the exact quote that I found it? Where was it? Can't remember where it was. I'll get back to you in a second. Yeah. No, it says mark my thought on Hamonic. I can say this and know lots of players. All of them have told me that the new acquisition is a bit of a different bird. Not sure what that's what I'd want around a young core. So he's had some interesting things. He's an interesting guy, apparently.
There you go. Hey, for Ottawa, interesting equals a third round.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
And then before we get to Toronto to cap this off, because Lord knows Endo and I talked about the Leafs a ton last show, and Danny, again, a big thank you even before the end of the show for just being willing to stick around on this.
Absolutely.
I felt bad for taking up too much of your time.
No,
but
You're good.
Winnipeg. Let's see. Winnipeg. They reacquired Mason Appleton, who they lost in the expansion draft for a fourth. Dealt Beaulieu to Pittsburgh. Again, dealt Nathan Smith to get rid of Brian Little. Got a fourth round pick back for that. Got a decent little haul there for Andrew Kopp. I do like Morgan Barron as a prospect. And then, again, shuffled some deck chairs. Oddly brought in Zach Stanford for a fifth. I kind of view the Jets as another one of those teams where, maybe could have looked at moving Stashny. You don't have PLD signed yet, but there really wasn't going to be too much that they do. They're not that, I can't think of the right word. The word escaped me. But they're not in that bad of a situation, basically, in terms of draft picks. They did fine.
Yeah.
They were fine.
Yeah, I think Appleton helps them as far as driving the play on that third line, which I know they desperately needed, and get him back for essentially offsetting what they lost him for in the expansion draft, I think was fine. They're going to have a really interesting offseason, and I'm very intrigued at how they handled the Dubois thing, and I think I had seen something about Scheifele and Hellebuck and their futures. I'm interested to see what they do as far as constructing the team going forward.
I think they're where Calgary was.
Yeah.
And you got to make that decision on what exactly you're going to do. To end this podcast, the Toronto Maple Leafs acquired future considerations for Alex Biega, a third-round pick in exchange for Travis Dermott, and sent 2 seconds and a third to Seattle for Colin Blackwell and Mark Giordano, and most importantly, locked down Curtis Douglas for a deal that starts next year.
That was the most.
I know how to push
important thing.
Endo's buttons, folks.
So, I said originally when he got into a fight with I think it was Stefan Mathieu, the other day in the AHL playing with the Marlies against the Chicago Wolves, and I said, "Oh, people."
I was actually to correct you because I'm a dick. I think it was Celio Mateos.
Whatever, fuck French ass names.
Yeah, we got the you got the S and the M right.
Yeah, of course I did. Yeah. Probably I just tried to put extra French twang on it, but I didn't need any French twang, so that's probably what fucked me up.
There you go.
But yeah, they got into a fight. Everyone's saying to call him up, have him play with the big boys, and I'm like, he's not like they're just gonna bring a guy because he threw fists at people who just want to make it out of the Always Hungry League and go play in the big league. Like they call him up and do that. And then they sign him to a entry level deal as of that goes active next season, and I completely ate my words.
Endo, if there's one thing we learned during this deadline, and I think Danny can attest to this, big will always have value.
Big.
Ben Sherratt, Curtis Douglas is 6'9", 248 pounds.
Nice.
Big will always get an opportunity.
He's a big boy that you can park in front of the net and just go wild.
Yeah, I mean, he did do a lot of work with Barb Underhill, who is a skating mogul, and has been doing a lot of work with a bunch of people. Couldn't do the same work for Brazil, but I guess Douglas, it's working out pretty fine. I mean, he's got an ELC now.
Got like 26 points in 47 games in the A, which isn't that bad, really.
Yeah, for a big boy too.
So the big move, obviously, for the Leafs on the main roster. I just wanted to get that little dig at you for Curtis Douglas.
Yeah. It's
Giordano.
focusing on the middle finger too. For people who are listening, I'm flipping Tougie off right now. This isn't for you, Danny. This is directly for Tougie. I swear to God, I'm gonna drive down the main right to your house just to flip you off and then drive right back. I swear to God, I'll make Paulina do it too. I'll get her a visa just so that we can go over there and just flip you off and go right back.
There you go. I look forward to it.
Fuck you.
Obviously, for the Leafs, there wasn't going to be too much you could do forward-wise, even if you wanted to kind of shuffle some things up there. They go for Giordano to shore up the defense, and they don't address the goaltending situation whatsoever, aside from putting Peter Mrazek on waivers, which he, of course, cleared. Endo, how are you feeling about the Leafs?
How have I been the whole entire year? I call it when I see it. When I get out of the first round, I'm gonna have a fucking party. I'm gonna go on stream. I'll be wild. Have beer. I'll have like a champagne shower, just going all over the place at the rooftop and everything. I'll go live from my jacuzzi on top of my condo, which just opened up this weekend, so I'm gonna be there a lot and just go wild. No, but realistically, I think this team can do something, but it's just incompetence and just not showing up when they have to. I keep going back to the game back when I watched them play the Yotes. I think it was like 2 weeks ago now, when Mrazek absolutely was a goddamn pool noodle, had to put in sugar in a net, and they played solid. They genuinely did. That team doesn't have any faith in Peter Mrazek in the same way that they had no faith in Michael Hutchison, in the same way they lost their faith for Freddie Anderson, in the same way they lost their faith for James Reimer, for the same way they lost their faith in the Jonathan Bernier, in the same way they lost I can go on forever about this. But generally, this team needs to figure out like who they are, because they've been having an identity crisis ever since Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Mitch Marner have gotten on this team. And until they really figure out what that is, because it seems like every night it's Austin carrying all the weight, and then whenever he's gone, everyone starts to pick up. Because he was gone for those 2 games, they played great. They generally played good hockey. And then he comes back, and everyone just go back to the lazy, lackadaisy self. And I think that's an issue that they have to address internally. Maybe bringing Blackwell and Giordano would help out a lot. It does help out on defense, but I don't think it's enough to do a massive cup run until this team retools and figures out like like how to play for each other and not to wait till the one guy to do all the work.
That goaltending, man.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not address that? Like, I highly doubt that, well, not that I highly doubt, the thought of Marc-Andre Fleury saying, yeah, I'll go to Toronto probably wasn't on top of his wish list. Mm-hmm. But man alive, you not only waive Peter Mrazek, who you entrusted to be, I mean, not close to Jack Campbell, but you entrusted him to be like, oh, okay, this is like a 1-for-1 for Freddie Anderson. Like, you kind of entrusted in that situation. You waive him, you sign the goalie that you got from Finland and from the KHL, and you put him on waivers, and of course Arizona was going to claim him. Why wouldn't Arizona want to claim anybody that goes through waivers at this point? Like, that whole situation just boggles my mind. I mean, Giordano, if he is engaged and is willing to play for a playoff team, good on you. Is it a winning piece? I don't know. Toronto just irks me. Not the actual city or the actual team, but just Toronto's decision making just irks me.
And it's kind of what we thought would be the case for both of us, right? We talked about it leading up to the deadline. Are we going to feel any better after the deadline? Probably not.
No.
And now here we are, still just kind of stuck in the same limbo because
you're
everyone
more
around
depressed than anything. I'm just kind of like, I knew nothing was going to happen. Like, I think
I had hopes, you didn't.
Yeah, I think the salt on the wound was them picking up Sateri off of waivers. I had a feeling it was going to happen, especially because of the whole grabbing Carter Hutton and future considerations. Now we can't even pick him up. It would have to be him to go up and then get back down again for us to grab him off of waivers, which would be absolutely hilarious, but I don't think it's going to happen. So now the Leafs are going to have to run Children, can't run Wall. So guess who we got to call up? It's either Carter Hutton or Michael Hutchison.
Near playoff hero Michael Hutchinson from the bubble.
For the Colorado Avalanche, playoff hero Michael Hutchison. I would not be surprised if they call him Hutton instead and said, no, we're just gonna keep it down there. Because they've said he's a great guy. Like, they've said, like, Michael Hutchinson's a great individual player, like a person, but they just can't win with him. With the Leafs. Like I said, they've lost faith in their goaltenders, if they're not Chilgren and if they're not Wall. Because they played great. I mean, granted, Wall got absolutely shit canned against Nashville, but then again, that Leaf team did not show up defensively.
Guys, this was a monster of a podcast, but worthy. I mean, again, I think, you kind of look at the undertaking of talking about most of the teams, and, it's bound to happen. But I thank you both greatly for being here today, Danny especially. Again, I mean, Endo takes time out of his week always to deal with my nonsense, but Danny, I thank you for doing so here today.
Absolutely.
Feel free, again, tell everybody where they can find you, what you've been up to, and how they can follow along with you and the Vegas Golden Knights for the rest of the season.
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at DannyWebster21. You can find all of my work on LasVegasSun.com. And you can probably find me on Twitter trying to figure out if Evgeny Dodonov is going to be a Vegas Golden Knight by the end of the day, or if he's going to be an Anaheim Duck. I don't know. And you could probably catch me sneaking onto Tougie streams every once in a while because, you know what, it's good background noise.
Hey, I'll take that. For a lot of people, they'd view that as a backhanded compliment.
Oh,
that is a compliment.
That was not. There are times where I'm working up until 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, and the fact that you're a night owl, it helps. So, yeah.
There you go. Endo Mills, what do you got going on, buddy, aside from trying not to... Like, the Leafs have been the least of your concerns, essentially.
Yeah. They've been the least of my concerns, but somehow I always end up talking about them more than anything else. Things are like, besides the whole like COVID thing, but like it's going well. Just started this new business program and things are going swimmingly. A lot of networking in these people, and I like it. In terms of streams, I think I'm going to be doing a lot of morning streams. for a while. Like a lot of morning streams. I was up at like 9 I was up at like I had to work at like 10, so I was up at like 7 a.m. playing Fortnite. Absolutely being terrible at Fortnite because they have the no build mode, and I've never played Fortnite in my life. I haven't played Fortnite in a fortnight, so yeah. Shut up, Tougie. Do you know how many jokes you made here and I have to pity laugh to make you feel better? A lot.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ego stroking on this podcast, like you mentioned, so it's perfectly fine. Everybody, again, thank you very much if you made it through this monster of a show. We'll be back this Friday. Myself, Endo, and Mr. Sin for the win. We'll get some of Sin's thoughts and see what kind of craziness happens. Maybe by Friday we'll know if Evgeny Dodonov's a member of the Anaheim Ducks. If we're lucky. Again, everywhere at Tougie24. Big shout out to Manscaped. Use code Tougie at checkout as always. Again, a big thank you to, of course, Endo Mills, but Danny Webster for joining us here. And Danny, we'll certainly have to have you back at some point once we get a little bit more clarity on what happens at Vegas and whether or not they're a playoff team or not.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Everybody, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.